Thank you for joining us for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Amitha Sharma. Here and across the country, this week brought the worst numbers yet of the COVID-19 pandemic. On Thursday alone, Johns Hopkins University reported nearly 3,000 deaths in the U.S. and well over 200,000 new cases. We've seen a steady upward trend all week. Locally, San Diego County topped more than 1,000 deaths since March. New cases continue to surge, and as a result, Governor Gavin Newsom is planning another stay-at-home order. KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us how it's likely to take effect in the coming days.
The restrictions aren't in place just yet, but Governor Gavin Newsom says it's right around the corner for the Southern California region, and that includes San Diego.
As early as the next day or two, as early or rather as late as the next week or so.
That's when he expects less than 15% of the region's ICU beds to be available. Data compiled by media partner KQED shows the region is at 23.7% availability as of yesterday. But a county spokeswoman said the state projects Southern California could dip below 15% by tomorrow. That would close a wide range of businesses for at least 3 weeks.
When the region is placed in the stay-at-home category, that bars, wineries, personal services, hair salons, and the like will be temporarily closed for that 3-week period.
Restaurants would also be restricted to takeout and delivery, and retail locations limited to 20% capacity. But schools already doing in-person learning could remain open, and essential services would continue. Newsom says most outdoor recreation sites would also stay accessible.
We want you to exercise and go on a run with a partner within your household. Go sledding, these outdoor activities in the winter, to the extent a walk on the beach or out in our state parks or your local parks is appropriate. We encourage that. Take a bike ride, go fishing.
However, playgrounds would be closed. The state's Dr. Mark Galley says after 3 weeks under the orders, the state will lift restrictions based on current transmission rates and ICU projections for the next month.
We know that by seeing that transmission rate come down 3 weeks after putting the order in place, that we should see projections of our ICU capacity increase above 15%, which allows us to lift that regional stay-at-home order effectively.
If lifted, counties will then go back to the tier based on their own county's case and positivity rates. Newsom says the measures will help protect hospitals for the expected surge in admissions, and he pointed to resources on the state's website for businesses and workers that will be weathering the closures. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
We'll have more from Taryn Mento later in this show. She's also reporting on the rollout of a safe, effective vaccine. There are several in development, but how will we know which one is the best? That story is coming up a bit later. Most San Diegans who attend church this weekend will do so virtually, but there's one that's defying cease and desist orders by worshiping indoors. As Jacob Ayer reports, that church is now linked to local COVID-19 outbreaks at multiple locations.
Since Saturday, San Diego County has issued health advisories about 3 Awaken Church locations in Kearny Mesa, San Marcos, and Chula Vista. While the church has not responded to KPBS requests for comments, on December 2nd, its executive of ministries posted a message on Instagram. In the video, Matt Hubbard spoke out against the cease and desist orders from the county.
There's going to be political ramifications, and you're picking a fight. You're picking a fight, and that's called bullies, and we're not going to be bullied.
As of Thursday, the 3 church outbreaks constitute 65 COVID-19 cases. The county asked those who attended in-person services from November 15th through 22nd to get tested or quarantined for 14 days, depending on which location they attended. In an email to KPBS, the San Diego County Sheriff Department said, if a business continues to operate in violation of the cease and desist order, the following could occur. A deputy sheriff or police officer may issue a citation for Government Code 8665. This is a written notice to appear in court for the violation. They later said another outcome could be a deputy sheriff or police officer may submit a case to the district attorney for review. The district attorney will review the facts of the case or violation and determine if the case should be issued and prosecuted or handled under civil or other provisions of the law. Reverend Shane Harris held a press conference today to call on Awaken Church pastor Jurgen Mathesius to cease indoor church services.
And so I first want to say to you, Pastor Mathesius, what you are doing is immoral. You're putting your people at risk.
Today, some houses of worship in California won at least a momentary victory in the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices directed a lower court to reconsider Harvest Rock Church's challenge to Governor Gavin Newsom's ban on indoor services. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
Congress is still trying to hammer out a new COVID-19 relief package. In the meantime, thousands of San Diegans can now apply to the county for help with their rent. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us why this money is sorely needed.
The money comes from a mix of the county's general fund and the federal CARES Act. It's the second round of rent relief being offered to tenants in the county after the first round in October awarded more than $10 million to residents. The county has set aside $27 million in total, aiming to assist at least 10,000 households.
Right now, a lot of renters are protected under the eviction moratoriums, but those protections are running out in the early next year. And so if you have been impacted financially by COVID and you can't pay your rent and you've been behind on rent, this type of assistance is very valuable.
The county is awarding up to $3,000 for each household, money that can be used for past due or upcoming rent. Tenants in cities with existing rent relief programs are not eligible, unless those programs, like the city of San Diego's, have already been exhausted. The application can be accessed on the county's housing website.
The application doesn't take very long, takes 10-15 minutes to fill out the application. We will work with people for the appropriate verification documents after they apply.
With coronavirus cases rising to record numbers in the county, the threat of eviction for San Diego residents struggling to pay rent has never been greater. Now, the county hopes a few thousand residents will be able to use money that might have gone to rent to pay for food and medicine. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
After Californians waited months for their unemployment benefits to be approved, there's a new push for a direct deposit option. Local Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez plans to introduce the legislation Monday. She says the current system is bogged down with cases of fraud, card freezes, and withdrawal limits. California is one of 3 states that does not allow the option for direct deposit of unemployment benefits. By the end of the year, city officials say they're hoping to have housed more than 1,000 homeless San Diegans. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says since the pandemic began, many vulnerable residents have stayed at an emergency shelter inside the San Diego Convention Center.
This is not easy. Waking up every morning in the middle of a gigantic room and staying motivated. And having the patience to do so.
Hundreds of people who used to be homeless are getting ready to move out of the convention center and into housing.
And the biggest challenge is, we'd house everybody here if there was an inventory. There is no inventory of low-income housing in San Diego or any other city.
So officials had to get creative, leveraging state resources to purchase 2 hotels, one in Mission Valley and another in Kearny Mesa, that in the coming weeks will be filled.
Let me put it very simply, everybody. We need more of this in San Diego.
Incoming San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria says there's no amount of people living on the streets that San Diegans should be comfortable with, and he's setting an ambitious goal of ending chronic homelessness during his administration.
This is a testament to what we can do if we choose to do it. It shouldn't take a pandemic to care about our unsheltered population.
Outgoing Mayor Kevin Faulkner says the pandemic brought the region together like never before to tackle homelessness. And he says using the convention center as a shelter is, quote, a public health success story.
Only 27 residents and staff testing positive out of more than 9,300 tests administered since April. That's incredible.
Since the pandemic hit, around 840 people plus a few dozen families have gotten housed, with hundreds more expected by the end of this month.
There's miracles that happen here every single day. It's the stories that we don't hear. Those people that got jobs on their own, moved back with their families, got their own places.
The nonprofit Alpha Project was helping run operations at the convention center. While other temporary shelters still exist, the organization's leader simply says,
we need more of this.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Our most up-to-date coverage is online at kpbs.org. Click on the Tracking COVID-19 link on our homepage and find all of the latest numbers. You can also see how local cases are spreading by zip code. That's right now at kpbs.org. The Farmers Insurance Open will tee off at Torrey Pines Golf Course in January. However, organizers say spectators will not be allowed to attend the event. The Farmers Insurance Open is set for the weekend of January 28th. Many of the sport's biggest names usually take part. The tournament is part of the PGA Tour's West Coast Swing. Those who want to watch can find it on the Golf Channel. Balboa Park is much more than just a beautiful park. It is home to most of San Diego's museums. They all closed once the pandemic hit in March. Some have remained closed, others have reopened, only to close again when San Diego moved back into the purple tier. KPBS reporter John Carroll looks at how some of our most cherished institutions are surviving in the era of COVID-19.
Balboa Park. Spending time here reminds you of why people call this 1,200-acre expanse the jewel of San Diego. This lush setting is home to some of San Diego's cultural gems, repositories of everything from priceless works of art to some of the wonders of the industrial age and the miracles of science. For the institutions that house all of it, the months since March have presented challenges none of them have ever had to face before.
The closures have been a very difficult thing to overcome.
Michael Warburton works for the Balboa Park Cultural Partnership, an umbrella group representing most of the park's museums.
Some of the museums, this is their third time being closed. Some of the performing arts venues haven't had performances for the public since March.
Some of the institutions are financially healthy enough to make it through to the other side of this pandemic easier than others. But for most of them, the loss of their main source of revenue, ticket sales, has meant painful decisions.
Many of the organizations have had to go through furloughs and layoffs, really cutting back on things that they can perform or programming. It has been a challenge, needless to say, for the organizations in the park. And different challenges for different organizations in different ways.
It's definitely been an interesting and unique experience I never thought I would have to go through.
Katie Titus began her job as the San Diego Model Railroad Museum's marketing and community engagement coordinator in June, months after the museum had closed the first time around. The fact that the museum actually hired someone well into the pandemic was a good sign of the place's financial health, but
the train's not stopping anytime soon, but we're running low on coal.
The Model Railroad Museum is fortunate in one unique way. A lot of the people that work here are volunteers, folks that live and breathe model railroads. But Titus says the financial hit from being closed for most of 2020 has been considerable. Pre-pandemic, about 2/3 of the museum's revenue came from ticket sales. Titus says having that financial stream suddenly go completely dry meant museum management had to get very creative very quickly.
Our membership and development manager and our executive director have worked incredibly hard to find grants and other funding opportunities, but we're still in need of donations to help close the gap from 8 months of closure.
Of course, it's human nature to look for silver linings in dark times, and there are some to be found in the park. Some of the institutions in the park are taking advantage of this COVID downtime to do the kind of work that's really tough when there are a lot of visitors around. For example, the Timken Museum of Art, where they're doing some renovation work inside. Back here inside the Model Railroad Museum, the museum's railroad modelers are taking this downtime to make some really serious progress on a huge project. This has been years in the making. It's the Tehachapi Pass Railroad, and as you can see over here, things are still early on in the process. They're still building some of the scenery and doing some of the painting, but over here, they're much further along. You can see they have some of the scenery already done, and eventually, when it's all finished, it'll look pretty much like that. But for now, being closed means doing things differently. Like most of Balboa Park's museums, the Model Railroad Museum has had to execute a quick pivot into the virtual world.
We have 2 virtual exhibits. We have our online lecture series. We have member-exclusive events via Zoom. We had our first ever virtual summer camp, where we had campers from Pennsylvania, Florida, California, everything in between, learning how to build a model railroad. And we've even gone international, delivering distance learning programs to Canada.
With news of vaccines on the horizon, plans are being made at all of Balboa Park's museums and other attractions to reopen. But for now, just this place, the stunning beauty of Balboa Park, makes it a great place to spend some time.
If there's any place centrally located in San Diego where you can safely distance and enjoy gardens and a nice day out, this is the place.
Even with its beloved institutions closed, this is still the jewel of San Diego. John Carroll, KPBS News.
A trip to Balboa Park might also include a stop at the San Diego Zoo. Going forward, you'll need to make a reservation. The zoo and its safari park in North County are taking the extra step to limit crowds. Reservations will be required whether you buy a ticket or have a membership. The zoo and safari park have been operating at reduced capacity since June. The new reservation system is expected to be up and running this weekend. A local resource center is hoping to make the holidays a little more special with baskets for families who have faced a difficult year. KPBS North County reporter Tanya Thorne tells us more.
The pandemic made this year a busy one for the Community Resource Center in Encinitas.
We've seen significant increases, 43% increases in people seeking food assistance, 53% increase in people calling our DV hotline for help. And so those increases have really just been exposed and exacerbated by COVID.
The center serves several North County communities with wraparound services, including rental and utility assistance, a food pantry, and domestic violence prevention and intervention support.
Making sure that we help people create paths to healthy food, stable homes, and safe relationships.
A path that is paved with the help of case managers who assist families in navigating the rental assistance application and any other services they may need. To make the holidays a little more special, the Community Resource Center is putting together holiday baskets for families who have faced a difficult year.
This year it'll be a one-day drive-through event. Everybody's pre-registered. 1,100 households will be served, and so
volunteers put together baskets for families, seniors, and newborns that will include food, blankets, household items, and games. This year's baskets have been specifically designed with puzzles and games for the families spending more time at home. An event made possible by the help of volunteers throughout North County.
I think people are just very loving this community and loving this community resource center. It's just a beacon of light for some families.
In Encinitas, Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
There will be no spring break for students at San Diego State, and many aren't happy about it. University officials voted to cancel break, citing concerns over rising COVID cases. Instead of the traditional 9-day vacation, students will get 4 rest and recovery days spread out during the spring semester, which will make for long weekends. An online petition against the decision has been signed by thousands of students already. San Diego Unified School District announced it will delay reopening plans. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains what the new year will look like for the region's largest school district.
The district was originally planning to open elementary schools on January 4th and middle and high schools on January 25th for hybrid instruction, but the current surge in COVID-19 cases has halted that timeline. The vast majority of instruction will stay online until further notice.
It's a disappointment, obviously, because we and everybody had hoped, that after the winter break, we could start expanding into, bringing into our phase 2 and subsequent phases, bringing more students back onto campus.
Richard Brer is the vice president of the district's board of trustees.
We can't do that as long as the county is in the purple zone, and every indication is that this is going to get worse before it gets better.
The district's website includes a dashboard with factors officials are watching to determine when it will be safe to begin reopening. The district will provide another update on January 13th. In the meantime, the district will continue offering limited in-person instruction to struggling students in all grades. So far, about 2,000 of the district's more than 100,000 students have received some form of in-person instruction. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
As COVID numbers rise across the county, a community health center in City Heights is trying to help those infected navigate the deadly virus. KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler tells us resources, however, are beginning to stretch thin.
The rise in COVID cases at La Maestras Clinic on Fairmont Avenue has been dramatic. Last week, positive COVID cases were at 22%. The week before, it was 11%. The cases have doubled and are continuing to trend way up. The clinic has no inpatient services, so medical professionals are trying to help sick people survive the virus from home.
So we have a great case management program here at La Maestra. Our case managers will call the patient, follow up with the patient, check in on them, make sure that they're doing okay, make sure and do kind of a triage of the family members, make sure that they've come into the clinic to get rapid testing, and just really providing a lot of resources.
Rapid tests are available at the clinic, letting people know if they're infected within hours.
If they are exhibiting symptoms, we try to isolate them. We actually have isolation rooms, and they're able to get a rapid test here right on site. Our COVID-19 rapid test is a 15-minute test.
People can also get tests and some treatment in isolation tents outdoors. Many immigrants in City Heights have had to continue working in dangerous conditions during the pandemic. And the virus has had a chance to take hold during a second wave of infections that has devastated the nation. Now, some supplies are running out.
If there is more and more patients and we need to bring on more and more staff, that we could be pushed to the brink of our supply. We always need more supplies for sure.
With household finances wrecked by the pandemic, a continuing affordability crisis, and federal aid stalled for months, not many people in this working class neighborhood can afford to stay at home and avoid the risk of catching the virus. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
In the weeks ahead, we'll see the rollout of the first COVID-19 vaccines. Facebook says it will take steps to remove any false claims. The social network says the move is just a continuation of its coronavirus misinformation policy. Facebook will remove any false information relating to the vaccine's safety, efficacy, or side effects. Any conspiracy theories that have been debunked will also be removed. California is expected to receive about 300,000 doses of an emergency authorized COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer could be the first one approved later this month, but KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us that first vaccine can complicate the search for the best vaccine.
It's a lot of paperwork to be a human test subject.
Do you have a pen? I do have mine. Okay.
A nurse hands multiple forms to volunteer Christian Ramers. The papers are the final steps before Ramers joins an experimental COVID-19 vaccine study with Janssen Pharmaceuticals. The company is part of Johnson & Johnson.
If you were to get sick, would you allow us to get that information?
The nurse's disposable gown rustles each time she explains what Ramers is signing. After a few pages, Ramers needs a new pen.
My pen just ran out.
He also answers a series of questions that has the nurse scribbling down too.
And then what is your ethnicity? I am Hispanic, white.
The process to join a COVID-19 vaccine trial is not only lengthy, but also invasive.
I have to ask some confidential questions. Okay.
In a follow-up interview, Ramers, a community clinic physician, says he endured it all to help fight the pandemic and skepticism around a vaccine.
And there's a lot of suspicion and fear, and that's based in historical injustices, really, from biomedical research. And so, I wanted to really take a proactive stance against that.
But the personal gain is uncertain. Ramers doesn't know whether he received the vaccine or a placebo. Researchers don't know either. It's called a double blind and protects the integrity of the study. But volunteers can drop out at any point, and researchers worry the first emergency-approved vaccine may give them just the reason.
Something people should know about clinical trials is it's always the participants' rights to pull out of the trial if they want to.
Doctors like Ramers would be prioritized to receive an emergency-approved vaccine.
And so that's a key consideration for me, is that if I have the ability to get a vaccine that's approved and I get in line because I'm a healthcare provider, you always have the ability to pull out of the vaccine trial.
UC San Diego Health's Susan Little is overseeing the local trial for Janssen as well as for AstraZeneca. They require enrolling hundreds to thousands of volunteers.
AstraZeneca study, we're hoping to put closer to 750, and the Janssen study, we're quite a bit ambitious. We're trying to put 2,000 on.
Plus tens of thousands of others elsewhere. But she's worried another vaccine receiving emergency use approval could push some people out. That would jeopardize long-term data collection needed to produce multiple vaccines.
It would be nearly impossible for one pharmaceutical company to generate enough doses of vaccine to vaccinate the U.S., let alone the world.
And she says many volunteers may not even be eligible for the initial doses that will likely be in short supply, even among priority groups. But she also says COVID is a public health emergency that demands an urgent response.
With the epidemic raging the way it is, we need vaccines as fast as possible for as many people as possible. So we're in a very difficult catch-22 position here.
Little says she's already planning how to talk to participants once the first emergency authorization is granted, which could be later this month.
We might advise our participants that really, if you were to wait until February, you could evaluate this vaccine study that you're on to see if it was better.
Janssen's is a one-dose vaccine, while Pfizer's requires 2 injections. FDA guidelines say it does not consider an emergency-approved vaccine as a reason to tell participants if they received a placebo. But a leading bioethicist from NYU says participants have a right to know under such circumstances. Raymer says he hopes he's in the vaccine arm of the Janssen trial.
But I did get a sore arm, and so, fingers crossed that it was the vaccine, but that's the idea of going in, is that you have to be willing to take a placebo for the sake of the science.
Still, he plans to review data from an emergency-approved vaccine before making up his mind. But Janssen told KPBS they'll notify participants about eligibility for an emergency-approved vaccine. The company said volunteers can use that info to continue as is or seek to be unblinded. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
That's all for this special edition of KPBS News. I'm Amitha Sharma. For all of us here at KPBS, thank you for joining us and stay safe.